So John, glad you're here. Yeah, I know
Thank
you've
you.
gotten some logbooks from your grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
John Byer, ensign in the United States Navy Reserve, and we did a little look into his file, and I think you're going to find some pretty amazing stories around your grandpa. So,
I can't wait.
Yeah. How about we can dive into the D-Day story, because you brought his logbook of D-Day, and then we can say, how did he get there, and then where did he go? How's that sound? So what do you know about his logbook?
Just what I've read, mostly the D-Day page because it's the highlight. But I paged through it before. It's sort of delicate, as you can see.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there was a lot of drama on the boat. Just hearing about some of the weird little frictions that happened between crewmates.
So I didn't see that part, but we saw 2 pages from D-Day itself, and I think there's some amazing clues there. So the ship he's on is a pretty old ship. So this is the SS Baleoid. It's commissioned in 1914 in Britain. Why is he on this ship for D-Day? He is essentially part of what they call the armed guard. So as a gunnery officer, he'll be in charge of protecting the ship against submarines, surface ships, enemy airplanes. He'll be responsible for that whole crew and defending it. And we'll talk about his previous service because he's been on 3 ships before this.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so he's already quite experienced and certainly was seen in high demand. So what's interesting about this, off Omaha Beach, which is, Saving Private Ryan, what they decided is, hey, we need to build an artificial port. And so they had one off the British beaches and off the American beaches. And these are called the mulberries, these giant things that come in from Scotland, and they become the port. But then they had a ring of ships around them that were scuttled to create a breakwater for this port.
Oh, nice, okay.
And so those are called gooseberries. And so he's a part of the crew of the Gooseberry. This ship, they're sailing across, they're in formation. That's why he said we're set, we're off the coast. And then if you see the next day, now they're following in, and literally what they're going to do, there's a picture of the line his ship's in. These are the Gooseberries. There's 24 of them off Omaha Beach. They will scuttle the ship, so they'll deliberately sink it to create a breakwater. He is the guy that sets the charges to actually sink the ship. So in addition, now he's the gunnery officer. They actually take fire from a shore battery, from one of the German shore batteries. The shrapnel will hit their ship. 5 of the Seabees with them, so the naval construction guys are wounded, and 3 of his crew are wounded as well. He's taken fire from the beach.
Wow.
They're landing this, which is supposed to be the huge logistic effort. You see, you've got the Higgins boats right there. Like you come in, there they are. So you'd be moving the guys in and out. That's where the casualties would go as you go around.
Okay.
The day before they're doing their training, so he's preparing everybody for their guns, their stations, but they're also doing gas drills. If you ever see the guys who land on D-Day have gas masks on, they're expecting the Germans potentially to use poison gas on them.
Sure. You're filling in a lot of gaps that I had very broad strokes understanding of. I knew that he had sunk the ship in order to mitigate, I guess, the chop that the Higgins boats were experiencing, which makes sense, but I didn't realize he was so close to it. I didn't realize he was taking it on fire. I'm just absorbing this like a sponge. I feel like this is long overdue and I should have known more about it before, but this is exciting.
So we pulled his file. Unfortunately, it's not one of the ones that's damaged from the war. And you see, this is actually a commendation from the commander of 12th Fleet, which is Admiral Stark. Admiral Stark had actually been the chief of naval operations. So you're talking about pretty serious high-level guy. He's the armed guard crew aboard the Baleoid, June 44, during the invasion of Coast. And then, your ship arrived on the beach on the 6th. You were subjected to enemy fire. We saw that. Your ship was placed in position and scuttled according to plan, which there's the plan.
Yeah.
And then after your ship was scuttled at the request of a naval officer commanding a construction unit in the Navy, so that's why the Seabees are there, you provided shelter for 150 men in order that they might be close to the beach for the opening of their operation on June 8th. So the Seabees have to go in and improve the shore so that you can continue to land heavier stuff and heavier stuff. And then throughout this operation, despite all hazards, you maintain excellent discipline among the members of your crew, succeeded in every way in carrying out your part of an important mission. For your leadership, discipline, and outstanding performance of duty, you are hereby commended. So,
Wow.
not only is it a commendation, but it's like from the senior admiral in the whole theater. This is a copy from his record. Probably nothing he would have talked about, but it validates
No.
what you see in the logbook as well.
That's
pretty
incredible.
neat, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes me feel like even more of an underachiever.
No, well, that's not, but so you can see, here's the first day of this, they're getting set, the planes are going over. He even mentions in here that the planes have different markings, which are like the black and white stripes just for D-Day.
Yeah.
It really places him there. Now he's taking care of all the ammo and everything. The package will be to scuttle the ship. And then, he's ready. Oh, wait, really bad day for Hitler, Adolf, which I love.
My favorite line. I also really like the opening. Awakened by noise of thousands of planes, huge red glow in the sky. That's just so cinematic, and the enormity of that is hard to get your head around.
Well, and look, 2 hours later, planes still going over.
Right.
Right.
It's 2 hours of just
So this
planes
is where
going.
you're like, the magnitude, the scale, D-Day at last.
Yeah.
I mean, so it had originally been the 5th, and they had, called it off while a number of these are at sea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like a pent-up spring. This gets us to 4 in the afternoon, 1600, military time, preparing to get underway. Still lots of planes going and coming. Won't be long now. They're on their way. So then they're in the convoys. The convoy's going to move to where they'll be, but they got to wait for the tide to be right so they can set the ship. Interesting enough, the ship was refloated later and scrapped.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. And then still quite a bit of fire, glow, et cetera, on the horizon. As you see, on June 7th is when this ship is then scuttled. And then the SS Baleoid goes to the locker. Charges set off by Lieutenant J.G. John H. Beyer. I don't know, pretty neat. But
That is very neat.
Any thoughts on D-Day?
Nothing that would be terribly poetic or would contribute much. It's
it's
such, like I said, an enormous event, and it's just truly an honor to be.
So that goes through, and then next thing they end up on a British ship, the Fosbeck. He's got here, take care of the boys. Took fragments out of Floyd's shoulder. Here he's actually in charge of treating the guys who are wounded as well. So
he's a multitasker, it would appear.
yeah. So let's talk about what he did before, and that'll set up what he does after.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Yeah,
Because do you know what he does after?
he goes home and he has a heart attack. That's
Okay,
all I know.
So that's long after. So he goes to school, comes back from Normandy, and they send him down to Miami for small craft training course and all the other assault landing craft. That's what he's trained on, because the assault transport will launch all these things off the shore. So he does that for 10 weeks, and then he goes to Oceanside, California for an amphibious warfare course, where he's now trained on amphibious warfare. Why? Because he is going to take on the role of beach officer.
So he's on the beach after
Just hold
Normandy?
on, yeah, just wait, he's got to go to the beach. You didn't know he was on the beach, did
No,
you?
I can't imagine he would be terribly excited about that assignment.
Well, he might be. So that's his training, and APA is assault transport. And then we have this one, which is kind of his record of military service. So he's an armed guard school. This is small boat school, beachmaster school. Here's the ships he's on. Hansford and Gosper are the last one, so they read down. This Baleoid's the one that they scuttle at Normandy.
Whoa.
Kind of says where he's in. Oh, and down here. Oh, he's got accommodation. So he's got the American theater, European theater with this would be a bronze service star officer of the campaign, the Asia Pacific theater with a star,
He was in the Pacific
the
Theater?
Philippine Liberation Medal, and the World War II medal.
I had no idea he had anything to do with the Pacific at all.
Well, just wait. So it's pretty
Okay.
cool. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So he starts out, so he goes to the Pacific. He'll leave this last class, the amphibious warfare class, and he heads out. And he's initially assigned to the USS Gosper. Very similar, assault transport. The idea is you load up the whole team, and when they leave San Diego, they can land on Okinawa. And they have all their Higgins boats. The idea is this would stop, maybe just outside of the enemy artillery range, let the Higgins boats down, and then they would go ashore. But now the beach control officer, where do you think he is?
I mean, one would think on the beach.
He's on the beach. So the beach control officer has to go in right away and then set up where the stuff goes. Where does this go? Oh, they're landing in the wrong place. These supplies have to go here. The tanks have to go over here. Here's where the wounded are placed. So someone has to manage that place called the assault landing beach. So let's start out. So he goes to the Gosford first.
Can you imagine seeing what went on in D-Day and saying, I want to get closer to it?
Well, yeah, and then they send him to school, and he really gets good at it.
Wow.
And then moves out. So the Gosper goes out just before Okinawa. Though they're going to reconfigure the Gosper to be a casualty evacuation ship. So instead of being an assault transport, which he's now trained on, the ship is now repurposed because they're expecting heavy casualties. Here it is leaving San Francisco. Your grandpa at the time was doing amphibious training in Oceanside. So really might have either, boarded up or right before that, literally as this ship is leaving into the Pacific. Once it gets out there, they'll go to the massive fleet harbor at Olathe. It's called Murder's Row. This is where you could fit almost 400 warships in one harbor. And so there they go, hey, we're going to need this to reconfigure this ship for casualties. And that's when he's going to join the Hansford. He's on board the Hansford when they cross the equator. They know they're heading what will be the Okinawa campaign, and then the two subsequent invasions of Japan are supposed to be the largest amphibious operations ever. And so he's now trained up for amphibious operations.
Is he like a SEAL? Are SEALs even a thing?
They don't exist yet.
Okay.
So there are some underwater demolition teams for the Navy. He would be more like, they're still beachmasters, but you don't typically see this at such a large level. But this is that transition from ship to shore, the transition from who's in command, it's really a pretty tough thing. And these ships are really structured literally to go into the assault and then launch the soldiers. And then someone's got to control them. Hey, we're ready for the next wave. The boats go back, pick up the next group of guys. They'll have little command and control boats on there. They'll have heavy equipment they're lowering on. It's a pretty elaborate operation as you do that. I noticed, here you brought the Neptune certificate.
Yeah.
I can talk about that kind of. Are you familiar with that ceremony at all?
I only know very vaguely. It's like the Equator Club or something. It's just when you it's like after a certain number of nautical miles or time or distance, you get awarded this. Or
Yeah. So in this case, the ships cross the equator, and for the Navy, this became a rite of passage.
Right.
It also, in many ways, I think, allowed them to blow off some anxiety about where they're going.
Yeah.
Right? So think of it almost like an initiation or hazing ceremony, where those sailors that have not crossed the equator are called polywogs.
Okay.
And they will be, you'll have these others, a court, dressed up as Neptune and other figures, will be presiding over them. The new members of the crew that have not been across the equator would be judged then by this court and by the sailors that have.
Okay.
And so once you've done that, then you're fully kind of integrated within that. I was reading one testimony from a sailor. He thought that was his most memorable day of the war. I think your grandpa has some competition.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So it may not seem like much to us, but you could see what it meant to those crew. Now I'm fully a member.
Sure, yeah.
Here's what we're heading for. We're all, kind of brothers in this endeavor as we go forward. A really powerful rite of passage, I think, as they move forward.
Wow, that adds some significance to this. I'm
even
more proud of it.
So now he's on the Hansford. They're going to land at Okinawa.
Wow, okay, so he was in Okinawa.
Yeah, he's on Okinawa. He receives a commendation on Okinawa. I haven't Haven't seen the details of that commendation, but another commendation
Okay.
for being the executive officer, a beach master, the beach platoon. On the ship, he's also manning the 40 millimeter gun. He's responsible for the anti-aircraft guns. This is kamikaze time. I mean, you've got,
Wow.
several hundred American ships are hit and damaged or sunk off Okinawa. So to be the gunnery officer in addition to the beach officer, I mean, it's pretty. So I don't know, could his commendation be for gunnery, for kamikazes, or could it be related? The ship is not hit by a kamikaze.
Maybe because he was at the guns.
Yeah, but they do
Sorry.
have some barrels at sea. I mean, certainly because Grandpa was at the gun.
Yeah.
And then, so then the campaign's underway, and then in the campaign, then they will evacuate wounded first to Saipan and then to the Big Fleet Harbor, and then on the 27th of May they go into the Philippines, and so this is why he's part of the Philippines liberation. The Japanese through the rest of the war, we don't think about the Philippines, but there's still 40,000 Japanese troops in the Philippines in September when they surrender. So the war in the Philippines is not over, even as Okinawa is settling down. And so then in the Philippines are going to prepare for the invasion of Japan. So that's kind of his set piece. You've come back to the States for training, small craft, amphibious warfare, and now you're on one ship and they're, oh man, we got to convert this ship to evacuate casualties. We're talking about some serious casualties. So on the beach in Okinawa, the largest landing in the Pacific at that point, and then they'll go into the liberation of the Philippines. And I don't know what the ship does and what the crew has them do in the liberation of the Philippines, but there are a series of amphibious operations around there. Might have even been resupplying units and things like that, until the war's over. A lot of the combat had gone up into the mountainous areas by then, but you'd be moving troops around to get to the little islands in the Philippines so they could do stuff. So even though you're not in Okinawa, you still have some serious challenges that require that. So that's Grandpa's kind of service. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, we're in position on D-Day, but I mean, the how many folks are in both theaters? Liberation of the Philippines, right. Okinawa, D-Day, the Battle of the Atlantic. I mean, those are four major campaigns that Grandpa is pretty central to.
It was like an all-star Axis tour.
Yeah.
I can't believe that he basically asked for seconds after D-Day. I feel like that. I barely was able to walk out of watching Saving Private Ryan with my head on straight. But to be like, okay, when can I go on the beach?
Well, and think of that.
Crazy.
I mean, he certainly had to volunteer for that.
Right.
And you know what's ahead. I mean, you're anticipating the invasion of Japan.
Now I know why he drank.
Well, I think at least you can understand. He's got, incredible pieces. Whether it's the Battle of the Atlantic, you go, oh, that's amazing. Oh, D-Day, that's amazing. Oh, what else is there? I think it's an amazing testament to, great young Americans who have to go out and do incredible things, but more than once. You have to do it again and again. So, I don't know, thoughts, questions?
I'll tell you one interesting thought is, the Higgins boat was created here in New Orleans. And when we moved here in the 80s from Des Moines, which is where Grandpa was born and died, the connection seemed more based on my father's love of jazz and cuisine. And I just find it very interesting that there's actually a connection with, my grandfather apparently went to school in Florida. He was in the Gulf Coast and was dealing with the Higgins boats. So the connection between my bloodline and this town feels even more significant, which is a weird sort of byproduct of this. There's so much to process and consider now that he's a hero in multiple theaters, but that's kind of cool too.
Think about how many times he would have been on the Higgins boats that were built here in town.
Yeah, exactly.
They built over 20,000 of them here. Without those boats, you can't assault these shores.
Yeah.
And, so you probably think of the hundreds of Higgins boats built in New Orleans that he oversaw, supervised, managed, loaded, and just to find somebody who's in the Philippines, Okinawa, and Normandy is a pretty incredible piece. And at each point, you could kind of say it's unsung, but he's got two commendations: a commendation for Okinawa and a commendation for Normandy. So I think it speaks volumes about his leadership, his competence, his ability to inspire one. We saw in here, he's taking care of his wounded guys. So, I mean, how they would have perceived him as well, I think, comes out in the record.
You've given me a tremendous gift. Thank you so much.
And since you bear his name, I mean, it's kind of a cool, kind of a piece there. I mean, it looks super serious, I can imagine.
It does.
That sounds like the person with that record.
Right.
You're
not going to give that guy lip.
Yeah, and I think in each case, it seems to me that it's not accidental that they've chosen him to be in these spots. These are tasks that really do require individuals of character and leadership. It's pretty inspiring. I was motivated just looking through the record, and I know you are too. But
absolutely, you've given me a tremendous gift. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.